How old are you right now exactly?
102 3/4.
Meet Dr. Gladys McGarey.
Is 102 years old.
He is also a doctor.
Known as the mother of holistic medicine.
She wrote this book, The Well-Lived Life.
He said, to be truly alive, we must find the life force within ourselves and direct our energy towards it.
They had never even thought of a woman doctor in that town. I had no place to sleep. The men had rooms, but there was no room for a woman. So I got the x-ray table with a blanket and a pillow. It was a matter of being kicked out, but then being brought back in.
102 3/4 right now. What are 3 truths you've learned throughout this entire journey you've been through in life?
First one is
Dr. Gladys, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here in Colombia yet.
In Colombia. I wish we were doing this in person. It'd definitely be more exciting, right? Especially if we're, throwing in some Spanish here and there.
Well, this is amazing. The fact that we can do this is amazing.
Absolutely, especially. Yeah, I mean, I want to go through your history. It's not every day that I get to have the opportunity to speak to a doctor that's lived through different generations, that's seen the origins of how, holistic medicine has really found. A lot of people are claiming you as the mother of holistic medicine. And I want to just dig through your story. It's such a fascinating one. And I just want to remind people, how old are you right now exactly?
102 3/4.
Wow.
103 in November.
My God. Well, I would say first guest we've ever spoken to that's over 100. Never mind the fact that you're a doctor that's, really popularized and founded the holistic medicine space. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the origins of that. And, you talk about your story of starting a holistic medicine practice. Back in what year was that when you first started that?
Well, we became official in 1973.
1973.
The American Medical Association took its a sort of official name in 1973. We've been working with it a long time before that, but
yeah. But walk me through when you first started. I mean, this is a different time for women as well, right? This is back when I think you mentioned that, women weren't even able to have bank accounts back then when you first originally started to practice. I mean, what were the inspirations that kind of drew you to practicing holistic medicine in the first place?
My parents, because my parents were medical missionaries in India, and my mother was an osteopath. So in 1913, she got her license when women really, really weren't even looked at, so except in the kind of alternative fields like osteopathy, which was just being, A.T. Still was just creating the whole concept of osteopathic medicine. And my parents they met in that school. So it's she being the person that she was a really like a bright light for me as I was growing up, because I saw how she could work with the people in India because my parents then went to India as medical missionaries and took their medical work out into the villages of North India up in the jungles. And the way she maneuvered through the medical fields and did the work that she did was imprinted on my life in a way that I knew that's what I wanted to do, and that's the way I wanted to practice medicine. And so when I got into the whole field, in 1941, I started medical school in September, and the war started in December. So, the whole time I was in medical school, the world was focused on killing and getting rid of things. That was the focus of medicine, which then, of course, in medicine included diseases. And I had to rethink what I was being taught, enough so that the dean sent me to the psychiatrist 2 different times because I thought there was much more to this than the disease. There was more to the whole thing that we were learning about. I was looking for, and so it took pushing beyond the boundaries even of the medical school that I was in, which was Women's Medical College in Philadelphia.
Sorry, what specifically were you guys being taught? And was it really around eliminating diseases that were occurring at that time rather than around prevention?
Oh, well, absolutely. The whole idea was that our job was to learn how to get rid of disease and pain. And getting rid of pain put us into the whole world of birthing, which was very important to me the way I'm thinking, the way I'm still thinking, that this is a very, very important aspect of it. And in those days, when I was taught this, we were women. In fact, I personally had my first 2 sons born with what we called twilight sleep, which was the mother was totally anesthetized. I didn't know that I had a son for 24 hours because I was so complete not with it when the birthing process was being born. And this was, it wasn't just here in the United States. It was almost every place where this was considered the modern way of birthing in this world. I don't know where all the other, but I know there were other countries that were doing it. So when the mother was completely anesthetized, the doctor or the midwife's job then was to get that baby out while the mother couldn't push anything. So we had to use forceps. And I was very good at using forceps. I learned how to do that and was able to do it during all those years. And it was, I think as I look back on what happened during those years, was that we really removed from women who are the people who can birth babies, we took their power away from them. So that now, even to this day, we talk about, as physicians, we talk about birthing babies as having been delivered of the baby. In other words, there had to be someone else that had to deliver the baby. The way I look at it, we deliver pizzas and we deliver speeches, but we don't deliver babies. Mothers birth babies. And I'm really committed to giving the power back to the birthing mother, because that's where it belongs. And it's it's a process that it's reconnecting itself to the reality that we as women, we know what to do. We've been doing it from the beginning of time. And so just give us back our power and let's see what we can do. And it's amazing.
Yeah, and you've been fighting that battle for decades, since the early start of your career. I'm curious, when you first started, when, going back to the fact that women didn't have as many rights as that time before, who are the types of clients that were coming to see you, and how did you manage to build that reputable credibility as you were growing your practice? I'm curious, with such a disadvantage of starting a practice like that at that time.
It took a lot of time, but circumstances worked over a period of time. After I finished medical school, I had an internship in the hospital, Deaconess Hospital in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they had never had a woman doctor there before. So when they gave rooms to the residents for when we stayed overnight, when there was a time when we had to be at the hospital at night, I had no place to sleep. The men had rooms, but there was no room for a woman. So I got the X-ray table with a blanket and a pillow, which was all right with me because I was so happy to actually be in the position of doing it. So I'd sleep where I had to sleep in order that I could do that, because it was important to me to get the training that I was looking for, and that was good. So that, but when my husband and I met my husband, we got married, medical school and all of that. We went to a small town in Ohio on the river. It was his hometown. And they had never even thought of a woman doctor in that town. And there were many times when I went in this one specific time, this woman, obviously, she had called for the doctor, and I went, and she had an obvious appendicitis. And so I said, well, I'll make arrangements. We'll get you in the hospital and get this taken care of. And she said to me, you get out of here, you go back to your babies and leave it, yeah.
Wow.
All that stuff. So I called my husband and I said, how about taking this? So he came over, did the same thing I had done, got her in the hospital. So for 2 years, this little town tried to put me in context. And it was a matter of being kicked out, but then being brought back in. But then my husband was called back into the war, the Korean War, because he was a flight surgeon. And so he was called. And so then I was the doctor in town. They had to, if they needed a doctor, they had to find me. So that was very helpful in that time, so that by the time I left the town, which was 9 years later, there was no question about who I was and what I was doing. So, the thing that's so beautiful about life is that time and circumstances and just moving ahead, keeping your eye on the purpose for which you are working this hard. If you keep that clear and your mind straight in that path, it takes time. It takes time. And you can't afford to get upset by people who are upset by you being who you are. It just isn't worth it.
And what was that vision you were trying to, that you focused so closely on since you started your practice? What was the goal for you or mission that you wanted to accomplish?
Well, the thing that I found out was that, and I truly believe, is that love is the great healer. Love is the great medicine. Love is a medicine that transforms empty sound and talk into actual healing. My oldest son is a retired orthopedic surgeon, but when he was ready to get into his practice, he came through Phoenix, and he said to me, he was going down to Del Rio, Texas, starting his orthopedic practice. He said, Mom, I'm real scared. He said, I have all this amazing training and I'm going into the world and I'm going to have people's lives in my hands. I don't know if I can handle that. And I said to him, well, Carl, if you think you're the one who does the healing, you have a right to be scared. But if you can understand that it's your job to do what you've been trained to do, which is awesome. I mean, orthopedic work, if you have some part of your body that needs help and there's an orthopedic person around, that's the person you want to have work with you because they know what they're doing. They know orthopedics. But in the process of doing that, when you have done your job to the best of your ability, you then turn the process of actual healing over to the physician within the patient who does the healing. Because it's that cooperation between the doctor on the outside and the doctor on the inside. We needed to work together. And it was understanding this. I understood at some level that that's what my parents were doing. I understood at some level that that's exactly what I was looking for. And the modalities that you used, whether they were even diet or anything else that you incorporate into what it is that you're working with the patient for, if they can't even understand because you are so technical or whatever it is that you're doing, it doesn't help. But if you can understand the patient enough that you can really relate to them in a loving way that activates the physician within them, who can then be your colleague in the whole process of healing, the modality becomes secondary to that. Because the important thing is the love connection, because in the long run, it's love that's the great healer.
Yeah, it's a powerful statement. It's a powerful statement. And I don't think this is really popularized or talked a lot about in Western medicine, where we often resort to pharmaceutical methods or scientific methods, where, you know, more of the traditional path, I guess I would say. And I want to kind of take you back to your times in India, where you must have seen very different methods of practicing and healing versus some of the traditional methods that we have today. And I've experienced it a little bit being born in Korea. There are certain methods that are taught there and coming into, you know, Canada and the US that just did not exist, right? And I saw that contrast. I'd love to kind of get your perspective on, like, what are some of the things that are practiced in places like India that you saw growing up, or that your parents saw, that just do not exist today in Western medicine, that you think are very impactful, that maybe are just diminished in the Western society?
Well, the one that just screams at me about that is acupuncture, because we brought acupuncture back into the States. Acupuncture was totally unknown. And it was in the 70s, the early 70s, that we had our practice here in Arizona, and my husband was writing a monthly newsletter called Pathways to Health. And this one time, we got an answer from a mailman, and those newsletters were out to people who would apply for them, you know, across the country.
Right.
A newsletter, a letter from a mailman in Maine who said, I got your newsletter and you were talking about, and he said, I've had an ankle that has been hurt, and nobody knows what to do with it. I've gone to doctor after doctor. For 3 months, I have not been able to walk my route. And he said, I've been laid up. But he said, I got your newsletter, and you talked about using a castor oil pack on your neck for a sore throat. So he said, I put a castor oil pack on my neck because I had a sore throat, and my ankle cleared up. He said, now, if you can tell me why that happened, I'd be really happy. And Bill and I looked at each other and we said, we don't have a clue. So he began writing that. The next newsletter that went out, we told that story. And we got an answer from a physician in Italy who said, if you knew anything about acupuncture, you would know that the meridian that started up by the nose went all down the neck and the body to the toe, went through the ankle and took away the obstruction that was there, was in the neck. When that was gone in the neck, it was taken out in the ankle too, because the meridian was cleared. And we said, well, what's this acupuncture stuff? What's this meridian stuff? But because we were interested and we knew that there was something happening there, we followed through on it and got more and more information about it until we had in 73, we had the first acupuncture symposium in the States at Stanford University, and we're able, and that's the point at which acupuncture came into the whole field of medicine. So it's incidents like that here and there and here and there that bring, life does things that way. Life brings things in, and if you're looking for them, and if it's something that's part of what is in your point of view, and you can fit it in there, and you do it, it takes root. And so it was having things like acupuncture, like homeopathy, like the understanding of the very energy patterns that are in our body, and therapeutic touch, and all of these other things that were considered really, really woo-woo in the medical field. But there were enough physicians around beginning to think about things that we were able to create the American Holistic Medical Association.
And why do you think in Western society people think of that as woo-woo?
Well, anything that isn't, well, no, you know what it is? Anything that's labeled woo-woo. That's it. You can take most, the same names that I've been called, I will never repeat, because it was that crazy in those times. But those were things I'd seen my parents do. They go out into the jungles of India, and they don't have any equipment with them except what they have in this little trunk. And I mean, it's important equipment they can use. But it was the way in which they treated the patient. It was a way in which they accepted what the patient was doing and saying, and were able to let the patient know how they could change their life, that the patient could change their lives enough so that they could be able to work with whatever it is, the disease process they were working with. And it's that kind of understanding that we're all in this together. There's nobody we're human beings living the same kind of life with the same kind of body, the same kind of cells that know what's going on, the same kind of nervous system. And it's awesome how our bodies know what to do.
Yeah, it's a remarkable thing how connected everything is. And it is unfortunate that when we're limited to everything being FDA approved for it to have some sort of legitimacy, or needing 100 years of case studies. I mean, when you think about, you hear stories of people that come from the Amazons where they said that without any pills, any pharmacy, they can pretty much heal and cure any sort of, these common pains or infections or illnesses just by using the different plants that exist within the Amazons. And people that are actually from there know how to navigate these different things that maybe probably in most people around the world aren't even aware of, right? Because we're just accustomed to going to the pharmacy or using antibiotics. And I don't know too much about acupuncture to comment for myself, but I certainly know people that have had back pain for years and years without really being able to explain what that was. But they are able to heal some sort of trauma that they've had, whether it's through some sort of plant medicine or just going through, internal work themselves. And then all of a sudden having that be gone. And it's remarkable. It's unexplainable. But these are all the things that you're talking about around holistic medicine that, is now legitimized for sure, with acupuncture being such a common thing. But I just imagine like how hard of a battle it was that you must have fought to make that a legitimate thing.
But the beautiful thing about it was we were learning things because because we listened to other people and found out, like, for instance, castor oil, the healing power of castor oil. Castor oil is called the palm of Christi, or the palm of Christ. And so that energy with the oil itself, and it's known around the world for its healing power. But for back pain, put a hot castor oil pack on your back, you'd be amazed at the healing that takes place. And in fact, my children say they're going to put on my tombstone, "Here she lies in spite of castor oil," because I use it on them so much and on my patients so much and everything. So, and still do, it's the, I think in German it's called Wunderbaum, and in I forget what it is in Hindustani. But anyway, it's been known since the beginning of time, probably, that this oil has so much in the way of cleaning up the body, getting the debris out of the body so that the healing can happen.
And is that for like back pain, specific muscle pains, or
No,
what specifically is it used for?
How long list do you want?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It's amazing how it's just a very healing process. And because it cleans up the lymphatics, it cleans out, and you get the lymphatic system cleaned out and healing starts happening.
And where can you just get that at the grocery store? Like, where are the ways that most people can get it?
Oh, you want to get cold pressed castor oil. You don't want the kind that's been doctored up to take internally. You get the one that it's cold pressed castor oil. You can, I don't know, here you can get it. I don't know if you can get it in Colombia, but
yeah, it's fascinating. Another one that I've been personally taking is ashwagandha, which I understand is used in some healing practices, in certain types of medical practices, and not medical practices, but more like yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a recent one that's now becoming more popular. So I would imagine there are infinite amounts of these that we just have not discovered yet. Are there any other ones that come to mind that maybe are not as popularized that can treat common pains or illnesses that most people don't know about?
Well, people that understand about therapeutic touch can have amazing things happen. A mother's kiss on a child's boo-boo is healing. It's that the allowing ourselves to see how love works in and out of our lives, and then take the steps that lead us to that. I was talking to one of the directors of a big hospital here a few years back, and he said, I don't know how we're going to be able to integrate the osteopaths, the homeopaths, the chiropractors, and he went through a list of names of different people, how we're going to integrate their practices into our hospitals. He said, I don't understand how we're going to do that. And I said, well, if you think that the practice itself is what's doing the real healing, you won't be able to. But if you can understand that love with which that practice is done is what's doing the healing, you can bring the practice in and see what happens. See how that particular person can use the modality that they have studied or worked with, whether it's nutrition, whatever it is, and see what they can do as they're reaching to the patient with love and caring. And I think you'll find amazing things happening.
Mm. Yeah. Talk to me a bit about implementing that, because let's say a listener is listening to this right now, and perhaps they've given up on love. Perhaps they've gone through trauma in their lives where they have a certain misconception about what love is supposed to mean. I'd love to know, what does that mean for you? What does the idea of giving more love, seeing the world in a more loving light, and how someone that has had these negative experiences could embrace that and implement that into their lives?
I don't think there's any one of us who has not had dark times, who has not had pain, and pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, physical pain. I mean, we're human beings, and we've all faced these aspects of our humanity, which can either get us stuck, or we can allow ourselves to keep on looking for the light. And the light that we're looking for is that aspect of within our own being that allows us to see the light. Because if you're not looking for it, you don't see it.
Right.
It's just not there for you. And if you're stuck and you're stuck and you're going to be stuck and not going to be anything else, you'll be stuck. But if you can keep looking for the light, I sort of see it like this. If I'm carrying a flashlight on my path, and I'm walking down my path, and it's a dark path, and I can see from one step to the next to the step, I can't take any steps off the path because I can't see off the path or anything, but I can go that way. I can take that step. And as I'm taking my path and watching on my light, if I see a little flickering light over to the right or to the left or something, if I add my light to that, all of a sudden it blows up their light and they may see something. They may be somebody who's walking down a path that's parallel or right, or even on my path, but they haven't been looking for anything until they're going along, and then somebody else's light shines. You hear something, you read something, you sing something, something happens. When I was working on this book, this friend of mine who was helping me with the working out the words, we spent hours, I think it must have been 3 hours one day, trying to explain love.
Yeah.
And we tried, and then we finally came up with the understanding that since the beginning of time, we have been trying to put words around love, songs around it. We've had stories about love. We've had paintings, and we've had music about, we have known about love and we've talked about it. But the interesting thing is that if a person has never experienced love, you can't explain it to them. It's like if you have a person who was born blind and you try to explain to them the color of green, he can't understand it. And if a person has never experienced love, whether it's a love of a plant or a love of a dog or a love of anything, and I think there are people who are in that really, really difficult place because they've never, I won't make that statement. Because if you don't look for it, you don't see it. And so it's that realization within our own being that there's something out there that I want to look for, that it's past this dark place that I'm in. And we've all got our dark places. If we want to just stay in that, it's sort of like this. If you cut your arm and you keep picking and it scabs over and you keep picking at that scab, it'll never heal. But if you do the things that you need to do to let it heal, it'll heal by itself. And someday it'll come back and I know who you are. The scar will remind you what it is, but you don't have any pain in it anymore. It's that kind of a thing. If you focus on the pain, on the darkness, on the awfulness of things, you're stuck in it. My mother taught me a lot about that, both in the fact that she was able to find a sense of humor in things that, you would never think about. Like a week before she died, at the age of 98, we were sitting on our porch and she and my dad were looking at the garden, and she said to my dad, "Look at that petunia plant. Must be 400 blossoms on that plant." And my dad says, "Oh, Beth, they're not more than 40. She says, "What's another zero?" She had that ability to take a statement and not argue with it, but just put something in it that made you laugh. You can't help it. And so then a week later, she fell and broke her knee, broke her ribs, and my dad and I were moving her from the gurney over onto the x-ray table. She saw the pain in our faces, and she says, "The old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be." And the next day she died. But it was that kind of a living person that I had as a mother, who taught me how to look at things in a way that either could be turned and made humorous or dispatched. Because my sister and I were in our 90s one time, and we were talking, and we would do this kind of a movement, and we'd say something, and we'd do that. And all of a sudden we stopped and we looked at each other and we said, "Why do we do this?" and it was just it was something that we just did.
Yeah.
And then we said, "Well, who did that?" We said, "Mama did it." And then together with one voice we said, "Oh, kuch parwane," which in Hindustani means it doesn't matter. And we realized that we had gone through our lives doing this hand movement when something's happened that really, really we had to put into context with other things. Like somebody had said something mean to us. I could take that meanness and take it in and say, that was awfully mean and it hurt me and I'm hurt by that, and then hang on to that. Or we could just take it in our hand, get it in our hand, say, close it down and then drop it down and say, it doesn't matter. Kuch parwane. It's just absolutely foolishness.
Yeah.
And we realized that we got to all kinds of difficult things by doing that, and even not trivial things, some of the really difficult things that happened in life, realizing that we had the choice of whether that was going to color the rest of our lives or whether we were going to just let it go. It just isn't that important. And it's being able to understand. See, I have this kind of an idea. This is just my idea. That when God, whatever we have our own concept of what God is. It's our own personal stuff. Created the earth and created us human beings and all that was in the earth. And he looked at the earth and all that was in it, and it was beautiful and everything was right. And then he created us human beings. And he said to us, now, I now give you are the only beings on this earth who have free will and free choice. And I now give you dominion over all the earth. Mm. And we, in our arrogance, thought he said dominance. So we took over. And look at what we've done to Mother Earth. Look at what we've done to each other. Look at what, it's that kind of a reality that we have the option of either choosing reaching back to our true humanity, which is what E.T. was doing when he was looking for home. He wanted to go home. But I think within our being is that essence that is reaching for our true humanity, which is the aspect of our being that knows that we have not only the right, but the responsibility and the privilege of taking care of Mother Earth and each other, no matter who we are or no matter what the circumstances are. And that doesn't exclude ourselves. Mm. We don't have to do anything. The good idea to learn to love yourself. And in the process, that's not arrogance. That's recognizing who you really are. And if you can do that, it changes things. It really does.
Yeah, I think when someone hurts us, we tend to, it's human nature, I think, it's to kind of wind up and protect ourselves so that we don't have to relive those experiences again. And I know you've personally been through these difficult times. I think at the age of 70, you went through a very difficult divorce and you were together for around 45, 46 years. And I understand how difficult that time was for you. What were the lessons you've learned about love and forgiveness, at a difficult time like that, when you guys have, built your entire lives together? And how have you kind of taken those lessons to live your life?
I had to focus on what we had done together, the joy that we had had together. And I can look back on it now and realize that I don't regret one moment that I spent with Bill McGarey, because we had a great life together. But then he took a vacation, It took me a long time to get to that point because I was so devastated and hurt and stuck in the place where I was really, in my thinking at that time, I had everything that we had built together was gone. We had these 6 amazing children. We had the amazing practice. We started the American Holistic Medical, on and on. and this whole list of stuff, and it felt like it was all gone. But what this one day, sometimes things happen real specifically. I was driving home from work and to an empty house and feeling very sorry for myself and hurt and damaged. And I was really screaming in the car. I was yelling and letting the universe know how hurt this was and how terrible it was, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden I pulled over to the side of the road and I stopped the car, and the voice it was the verse came into my mind. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And as soon as I got that in my mind, it took putting a whole new lens in my glasses. I could see things in a whole different way. And I went home and I changed my car license plate and had "Be Glad" on my license plate, so that every time I got into the car, I was faced with the "Be Glad" idea. And when I was driving, so I had that license plate until I stopped practice active medicine, until I retired. So every time I drove through the streets of Phoenix, the person behind me was getting the message, "Be glad." It was that kind of a wake-up call for me. And as I focused on that, I finally wrote Bill a letter and thanked him for giving me my independence, because I had depended so much on him to do various things, that I felt we were a team, and we were. But when I was kind of booted out into the universe, I had to sink or swim. Nobody was going to do this for me. I had to do it myself. And when the "Be Glad" thing allowed me to claim my independence and work on that, and I've been able to create a whole new life and an amazing life since then.
Yeah, I think oftentimes when we go through a hard breakup, especially a marriage of 45 years, I think we often resort to putting a negative light on someone. Yet it seems like you did the complete opposite. And is that the advice? Right. It took time for sure. But I guess ultimately the lesson you learned was to forgive and to love. Is that something you recommend to people? Absolutely. Like writing a letter, even maybe you don't even have to share it to someone, but just something that you can express as if you're talking to them through forgiveness and love?
Absolutely. I mean, anything that works for you. But the point, we tell people just get over it. I don't think that's good advice at all.
Yeah.
I think you have to live through it. And if you can live through it, you learn the lessons that come with that horror, whatever it was, that experience that you went through. If you lived through it, like getting that "Be Glad" experience, because my soul was reaching for something to hang on to. I needed to have something that was more than what I was dealing with, because that was tearing me apart. And I finally got it when I understood that. And it can happen with anything. You may hear a song, a friend may say something to you that gives you the key to what it is that you've been looking for. Because if you're looking for it, you'll find it.
Yeah.
If you're not looking for it, no matter who says it or does it or whatever it is, you won't see it. I have these 5 L's that I call sort of a foundation for building a philosophy. And the first one is life. life by itself is like a seed in the pyramid. It's there, it's been there 5,000 years, it's got all the energy of the universe in it, and it can't do anything until love, in the form of light and water and so on, makes that seed crack, and life can really enter in and join with the life within the seed, and then it can grow. It's like the sperm and the ovum. They're two separate entities, and they don't bring any life to each other until they unite. And then they become a pregnancy. And that pregnancy is, the mother has that privilege of housing this being growing within her, which the baby is a complete entity unto itself. No, it's not, as long as it's in the uterus, because everything she eats, it eats. Everything she thinks, the baby thinks. I mean, all of the emotions that she has, the baby feels, and she is like all the parts of our body we know are tied together. Well, as long as there's a pregnancy, that's all part of that. But when the baby takes its first breath, it becomes its own entity.
Yeah.
Until that, but at that point, it takes responsibility for itself. It takes its first breath, and it becomes a human being. And it's that inner awareness that we all have for for who and what we are that allows us to keep on becoming human beings.
I noticed that you mentioned your husband's name is Bill McGarey. I noticed that you kept the last name. Was there a specific reason for that?
Yes, because my license and everything else was on, McGarey.
Oh, I see.
Got it. Yeah. The things that we had written together,
Yeah. It's part of your history now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to shift towards longevity a bit and talk to you a little bit about the differences between health span and lifespan. When I have even conversations with my mom or people in my family where, you talk about these luminous questions about life and how long you want to live. Would you want to live forever? These are just questions that you have at 12 a.m. at night when you're rooming around. And a lot of people, I get the patterns that they don't want to live that long. They don't want to live to 100. And oftentimes when I dig deeper, it's because they often say that they don't want to live with illness. They don't want to live when they're sick. They kind of associate sickness and illness oftentimes with growing older. And I want to get your perspective. You're 102 3/4, I believe now.
Yes.
And you're still vibrant. You're mentally sharp. You're energetic. Like there's a certain energy about you at that age. And I want to get your thoughts on how you perceive longevity based on where you are now.
I think it's what you're reaching for. See, this concept about our true humanity, I think that's the combination of life and love, those two elements that are so essential. And as we bring life, love together and experience it and let ourselves experience it and reach out to others who are having a hard time with it. Life is a hoot. When you begin to see what's going on around you and within you, and you realize that I have a friend who wakes up in the morning and she says, "Oh, not another day," you know, and she tells me that. And I tried to talk to her about it, and she, she doesn't want to hear it. It's because she's not, that's not what she's looking for. And I started to tell you the 5 L's, and I didn't get past the first 2. So let me go off on that tangent now. The third one, the first 2 are life and love. Okay. The third one is laughter. Laughter without love is empty sound. It's mean. It's cruel. Families are torn apart by it. You know, if it's not with love, it can be just really damaging. But laughter with love is joy and happiness. So what are we looking for? You know, if my friend is looking for a dreary, dragged out day, she'll get a dreary, dragged out day. If she's looking for love and happiness, she'll find it because it's there to be found. The fourth one is labor. The first one is labor. Labor without love is drudgery. It's hard. You drag yourself to work. Too many diapers. There's just too much to do. But labor with love is bliss. It's why a singer sings. It's why a painter paints. It's why you do what you're doing. It's why I do what I'm doing. You work 10 times as hard because you have that inner life force that's calling you. So labor with love is bliss. The fifth one is listening. Listening without love is clanging gong. You don't hear anything. My friend that I'm talking about who wakes up like that, she's not listening. She really doesn't want to hear it. Someplace along the line, maybe something will happen that will awaken her, and she'll say, "Oh yeah, that's what we've been talking about." But it may not. I mean, she may just make her transition with that attitude. But whatever it is, it's what we choose, what we as human beings choose to make of our lives. And, I had the wonderful example of parents who lived their lives to them. They lived to be 98. My dad was 96. My mother was 98. So they kind of lived their lives at the fullest, and then they kind of went off the cliff and died. It's just how you choose to live your life. And for me, I don't really know how long I'm going to live. I don't know from one day to the next whether I'm going to live the next day. I mean, that's okay. Whatever it is, it's going to be a good one, and I'm looking forward to it. So it's what we reach for. And if we're reaching for pain and suffering and not anything that gives us life and love, then that's what we'll get.
Yeah. And is that a key difference, you think, between your friend and you, where you're so excited to get up, you feel this sense of excitement and energy, is that you have this focus on purpose and providing value and love to others. And you think that's really the key difference between how you guys perceive life and what contributed maybe to the longevity and the health of how long you've been on Earth.
Absolutely. And we've known each other for years, So we've talked about these things, but it's what we choose to put within ourselves and feed ourselves with. The kind of food we feed ourselves, our bodies, the kind of food we feed our minds and our spirits are just as important and maybe more important.
Yeah.
And, if you can get a sense of humor, I just have to tell this story because I think it's so funny.
Yeah, please.
I had just had my 99th birthday party, and I was coming out of the grocery store with my cart of groceries, and I was still driving at that time. And so I'm starting to pick my groceries up and put them in the car. And this elderly gentleman comes by and he says, "Oh, may I help you?" And I said, No, I can do this myself. And he stands up tall and he says, "Well, I'm 86." Well, somehow that pushed a button in me and I stood up higher. And I said, "And I'm 99." And I marched off into my car and sat down. And I sat down and I thought, "You nasty old woman." He was just trying to be nice. And I thought I really should go into the grocery store and apologize to him. But then I got to laughing about it because I thought we were two kindergarten kids. I'm bigger than you are, or whatever it was we were
Right.
puffing ourselves up about. I mean, to have that mini reaction, I thought to myself, this is a comedy scene. It's just so funny. And I sat there laughing in my car, and I didn't go back and apologize because if he'd have thought about it and thought about it as funny, he'd be in the grocery store laughing, because that was really funny.
Yeah, it's a contrast of differences, right? I think one person would have had their whole week ruined from that experience, constantly thinking about it from a negative light, yet you decided in one moment to turn that experience into a comedic relief moment where you were able to laugh about it, you were able to tell your friends about it, you're telling other people about the story now. I mean, think about the contrast between all of that, and it was totally within your control, just like it is in everyone's control to let what they in, right?
Yeah. I could have made more of a, by going in and apologizing and making a big deal. But it really wasn't worth it. It was worth a good laugh.
Yeah. When kind of aligned with that idea of longevity, I don't know how much you follow this kind of movement of biohackers where they're jumping into cold plunge waters. They are laying on beds of infrared red lights. They're going into the sauna. They have these fancy gadgets that are measuring different biometrics around your body. And it's a huge industry now of people trying to live as long as you, but using the different technologies and science that are supposedly existing today. Yet here you are alive and well at 103 years old. You didn't have access to any of this. What are your thoughts when you hear about this movement of biohackers and people that are trying to live forever? What's kind of the first thing that comes to you having lived through all this?
God bless them. That's my answer to that. God bless them. If that's their choice and that's what they want to do, God bless you. Do it. Do what you want to do, and it may be a huge thing for you. It may really do that for you. I who am I to say? I couldn't waste my time on it, but for me, it's just kind of, like going back into the grocery store to apologize or something. Sometimes you just don't need to do that, but those people do. If they need to do that, God bless them. Let them do it. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. So no real opinions about it.
It's like trying to tell everybody what they should eat. I have a son who absolutely can't eat garlic. And really, you don't want to be around him if he eats garlic. And the rest of our family loves garlic. So, how do we make a family meal and have part of that without garlic in it? It's because he can't his body can't tolerate garlic.
Hmm.
And who's to tell him or anybody else in the family that he should be eating garlic?
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of diets, what are most of your diets comprised of? This is something I was really curious about. And has that changed over time?
Oh, it depends on circumstances, but it's basically as fresh food as I can eat, and just a, a reasonable amount of protein and a reasonable amount of salt. Here in Arizona, you need some salt because you sweat. They're where you're living and what's happening in your life. And I love Indian food because I grew up with the Indian food, but it's I think it's what makes your body, as you pay attention to your body and how your body responds to different foods, you can be aware of what it is that your body really wants. And if you're understanding something about nutrition, something about diet, and you've studied this and you know there's certain things, and you put that into context with it and use it, that's great. But if you're in a situation where the only thing you can eat is what you're being presented with, bless it, and it'll work for you.
Mm.
If the food is something that is blessed, it's transformed so that your body can take it and say, well, okay, this is blessed. I can do this. And then you're not taking it in and saying, oh, I've had patients who are so convinced that certain things are bad for them to eat, and they won't eat them. And, so that's all right. If they don't want to eat them, that's their choice. But sometimes it's just a thought form. Sometimes it's different. Food is transformed when we eat it. If we eat it with an attitude of gratitude, and the body says, oh, yeah, this is good for me, the body takes it and it's good for us. This whole business of stem cells, an interesting thing here. In 2006, we had a friend who was working on stem cell research in Costa Rica, and he was up here, and we were talking together. And he said they found out something very interesting about these stem cells. In the laboratory that they were working, they had a certain laboratory that always got better results with the stem cells, both in the petri dish and when they were implanted within the patient. And this one lab was doing that, and they couldn't figure out what was happening in that lab, because the protocol was all the same. Everything was the same with the other labs, but this one particular lab always got better results. And so he finally, they tried to figure out, he finally went and sat there a whole day watching what the technicians were doing. And he said the thing that he found out was that there was one lab technician in that laboratory who loved the stem cells whether they were in the petri dish or whether they were being injected or whatever. The way he handled those stem cells, he said, was obvious. He was either saying a little prayer or he was doing something that was loving with the handling, the way he did those stem cells. And he said, it suddenly dawned on me that love is the healer. And I said,
Wow.
This is it. Love is the healer. Even the stem cells understand that. So when I understood that, I had a patient who was going to have her knee replaced, and she wanted to do the I forget the name of the hike in Spain that people do. It's a wonderful hike. Anyway, it's a I think an 18-day trek that we did, and she all her whole adult life she'd wanted to do that, and she was going to have this knee replaced so that she could do that. Well, we got to talking about these stem cells, and she said, she said, I've got 6 months before I'm going to have the trip to do, if I can do it, and have the knee replaced and all that. She said, I'm going to try that. She said, I'm going to try working with my stem cells and seeing if I can love them enough that maybe they'll do the healing. I don't know how she did it, but she did it, and she didn't have to have the knee replaced, and she did the trek.
Oh, wow. So no stem cell, like no process needed.
No, I mean, she was able, with her ability to conjure up what it was within herself about loving those stem cells and talking to them and working with them and giving them the power of love to heal the tissue that was damaged, so that she didn't need to have that transport, and it worked.
Wow. Was there anything specific she did that went through that process for people that may want to go through that?
Nope, they have to find their own. I mean,
it's different for every person, you're saying.
It's the kind of thing, those stem cells needed to have her love. And if you don't know what love is, and you can't experience it, that's a difficult situation. But if you know what love is, and you know you've experienced it, and you know that you can love those stem cells, or however you want to do it, but it has to be your own process. I couldn't tell her how to love her stem cells. I could just tell her this story that I had just heard about how it was love that was really allowing those stem cells to do their work. And then she took it and she did her work on that. So it's that way, my story about my flashlight. If my flashlight shone on her little flickering light, and she took that and blew it into this whole picture for herself and did what she did, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's a very powerful story. Dr. Gladys, I am so appreciative of our conversation. I mean, this has got to be a masterclass on mind-body connection, the connection of our souls, how they can all work together to heal, to love, to appreciate this life that we have on Earth. And I want to make sure that we plug your book, the latest one that just came out, called The Well-Lived Life. I know you also have a foreword with Dr. Mark Hyman, I believe, who I also follow. And definitely we'll link that in the links below, so make sure people check that out. And for my final question for you, there it is, The Well-Lived Life. 102-year-old and 3/4 now. Doctor's Guide to a Great Life. That really leads me to my last question, which is, you're 102 3/4 right now, and you've seen the different healing practices from all the way from India to your parents to living through the war to where we are now in modern society, and you're still practicing today. What are 3 truths or principles that you've learned throughout this entire journey you've been through in life that can benefit people, that can teach people about love, about living a better life?
I think the first one is for us individually to accept our reality, that we're in charge of our lives, that we what if we love our lives, if we love our bodies, if we love the things that are happening in our lives, and they may not be always kind, and they may not be always beautiful, but if we get the lessons from them that they are trying to teach us, then we'll live through them and we grow. If we don't, it's like my friend who doesn't like each day. That's something that I can't give her. It's not something that I can even demonstrate for her because she just can't understand what I'm talking about because she doesn't want to. And it's when you're really wanting to learn something and you're reaching for it for which I call my true humanity and your true humanity, and you're reaching for it, you'll find it. You'll find it. You just have to keep on. If you find yourself stuck, work a little harder. And if it's still stuck, work a little harder to look for the light and find it, because it's there. Sun always comes up and the moon comes up. These are things we can depend on.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Well, appreciate you, Dr. Gladys. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We hope everyone checks out your book. Thank you.
Thank you.